In this video, I'm going to show you some of the common error messages that you might see on an asbestos survey report. So this video is geared up towards the Asbestos Survey V4 template, which is the UK template and follows the HSG 264 standard. Now, if you see errors like this on the report, as you can see here on the left-hand side, they're going to prevent you from issuing the report to your clients, and they need to be resolved before you download the PDF. So we'll work through each one in turn, and I'll give you some general strategies that you can use when resolving these types of issues. So the first general rule of thumb I'd like to mention to you is that the errors are usually sort of structured in a way which helps you to resolve them. So the first part is the section, generally. Not always, but generally. So you can see in this case, this is relating to the attachments section here on the right hand side. Now this isn't always the case, like I say, because some errors might relate to multiple sections, but in this case it's pretty clear. Often the next part is the item that it relates to, if there are multiple items, and the last part is the specific error message. So in this case we need to look at the attachments section, we need to find this item, and then we need to figure out what this means. So let's head into the attachments section. And we can see we've got this item, the top one, which is clearly a floor plan, and the title matches what we've got in the error message here. So what we can do is we can open this up, and we can see that there's a rough sketch, but there's no final image. So that's exactly when this error appears. If there's a rough sketch, but there's no final image, then it's going to throw an error, because we expect you're going to want that final image on the report. The rough sketch doesn't appear on the report, it's simply a placeholder until you have that final image in, and it makes this error appear. So we know that final floor plan image is missing. Now there's two ways you could resolve this error. If this attachment wasn't required, if it's been added in error for example, you could simply delete this item and that would get rid of the error. Alternatively, if this is required, which is probably the case, then you can simply upload your final floor plan image. Once I hit save, this error message is going to disappear. As you can see, that error is now gone, as expected. The next error is saying, in the inspection section, there's a sample 001, which is referenced by multiple items. So you'd expect when taking samples that each sample, in other words, what you're writing on your sample bag, should have a unique sample ID. An exception to this might be though if you're doing cross-references. If you had a sample and a cross-reference with the same sample ID, that's absolutely fine, that's not going to throw an error. But if you have two samples with the same sample ID, that is going to throw an error. So let's take a look at the inspection section. And first of all we need to identify the inspection items which are using that sample ID. There's a couple of ways you can do this, and the easiest one I find is to group by sample ID, but I'm going to show you both. So let's scroll to the right and find the sample ID. Here we go. So this is the sample ID here. Now this list might be much longer and it might not be quite so easy to find the samples we need to. You could just look through them and sort of find them manually. But like I say, this could be hundreds of items potentially. So what you could do is you can pin this column to the left. Now this will remain on the left as you sort of scroll around, so you can kind of get a bit more context. We can also full screen this, by the way, if you wanted a bit of extra room to sort of maneuver. I'm not going to do that because I'm using two windows. But by pinning this to the left, I can sort of quite easily see, okay, these two relate to these two basement items, and this one is for an item in the hallway. But I kind of want to be able to see it a bit more easily. So what I'll do is, instead of pinning this, I'm actually going to group by the sample ID. So what I can do is to group by the sample ID is I can drag this up to the top. If I scroll back to the left, you'll see we now have these little drop downs. So these are the three items relating to that sample ID. You can see the number in brackets is the number of items. Now there's one item relating to sample ID 003, and there are four items which have no sample ID. So when you group by a column in the way that I've just done, this convention here is what you'll see. Now we can scroll to the right and see that we've got one flooring item in the basement and another pipe lagging item in the basement. So the problem is that both of these items are referenced in the same sample ID, and that's incorrect. I'm going to imagine the second one is the one that is wrong. So I'm going to click through, open up this form, and I'm going to change this to sample ID 002, imagining that that is what we should have wrote on the sample bag. That is the correct sample ID. When I hit save, that error message will disappear. Great, so that's resolved that error, and you can see, because we've still got this grouping applied, one of these items here has moved into this next one, and it's now using sample ID 002. Okay, so let's look at the next error. We can see here that the issue is in the inspection section, relating to this item in the basement, which is a ceiling item. So if we have a look down our list, we can see it's probably going to be one of these two, because they're ordered by building, level, and then location. Let's scroll to the right, and we'll find that ceiling item, which is this one here. I'm going to open this up, and I'm expecting that the sample ID is missing. So you can see the suspect asbestos has been checked. The inspection strategy is sample. Therefore, we'd expect there to be a sample ID. And that's why this is erroring, because we haven't put that in. So I'm going to pop a sample ID in here, 005, and I'll save this. And you can see that error message has now disappeared, because we now have the required information for a sample, which is to have the sample ID in. Okay, let's look at this next error. Well, in fact, this error message here and this one below are both related. The first one is saying there's some missing information, and the second one is saying that the material score can't be calculated. So what's actually happening is some required information that is needed for the material score isn't there, therefore it can't calculate the score, which makes sense. So let's have a look at this item. First of all, we know that the issue is in the inspection section. That's that first bit here. This is relating to an item in the basement, and we're looking at a walls item. So let's find the item this relates to. Well, first of all, we'll go to level 0, and if we scroll to the right, it's going to be one of these two basement items, as we can see. Now we can see the walls item just here. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to scroll down, and you can see we've suspected asbestos. The strategy is a strong presume. We presume Crocidolite, but we haven't actually scored this up yet. Now, if I was to just put in one or two of these things, then it still couldn't calculate the score. It actually needs all three, based on the UK method of calculating the material score. So I'm going to select all three, as you can see here, and I'll hit save. Keep an eye on those errors. As soon as I do that, they've disappeared. Because they were both related, one was saying the data was missing, and the next one was saying the material score couldn't be calculated, it solved both of them in one go, because items now are there, because the scoring criteria has now been added, and we can now calculate that score. Okay, so this next error is an interesting one. The issue is in the inspection section, and we're looking at this location record, and it's saying there are ACMs present, but you've checked there's strong evidence that the room or location does not contain asbestos. So this is something that is outlined in the HSG 264. If you can't get access to something, but you are confident that there's no asbestos there, then you should be able to indicate so. So let's have a look. We've got main building, level 0, 002 hallway. So it's going to be this one here because it relates to the location. So we're just going to open this up, and I'm going to scroll down, and you can see we have this checkbox checked. So we've said we don't think there's any asbestos in this location. Now the location is what we have here. So this building, level, and location. Let's take a look and see what other records we have in the inspection section relating to that location. Well, this one underneath and this one underneath, these two, are both relating to that location. Let's have a little look. So we've got some electrics here and some flooring. And you can see we suspected asbestos in both of them. This one was a strong presume, and this one's a cross-reference. The cross-reference is for sample 001. So if we open up the sample results, we can see there is currently no result for sample 001. So it must be the other one that's causing the issue. Now let's have a look at the strong presume. A strong presume is saying that we believe there's asbestos there, and we've presumed Crocidolite as the fibre type. So this is the issue. We're saying that for the location, there's strong evidence that there's no asbestos. However, for an item in this location, in this case, this one here, we're saying there's Crocidolite, which is asbestos. So those things don't match. So the way that we can resolve this is we either untick that option on the location or we change the item. Now, if the item's correct, we don't want to change the item. That's what we've presumed. So we more than likely want to uncheck that option on the location, which is that strong evidence that there's no asbestos. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to untick this and hit save, and that error message has disappeared. So just bear in mind, if you're adding room notes, which most people do by adding those location records, if you tick that flag, our system's going to look for any other items in that location and just check if there's any asbestos that has been found. If clearly there's a bit of a discrepancy, one says there is asbestos, one says there isn't, then we're going to throw this error on the report. And I've just shown you how to resolve it by unticking that box, because clearly it doesn't make sense anymore. There is an item in this location with asbestos, therefore it kind of is nonsensical. So we've unchecked that and the error's disappeared. Let's have a look at the next error. Okay, so this error message here and the one below are both related. The first one's saying there's some missing information. The second one's saying we can't calculate the priority score. So let's have a look at the record this is talking about. You can see here it's relating to the inspection section, which we've already got open. And this is the item that is causing the issue. So we're looking for a ceiling item in the bedroom. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down till we find the bedroom, which is this one here. There's only one record, so clearly it's this one. I'm going to open this up. And just to confirm that, it's got ceiling for the item, therefore that makes sense. This is the one we want. I'm going to scroll down and we can see that the priority assessment checkbox is checked. However, all of the scoring criteria underneath isn't checked. Only this first one's been entered. So to calculate the priority scoring, every single one of these must be entered. I'm just going to score this randomly just to get rid of that error, to show you that that will disappear as soon as we put these in. As soon as I press save, those two errors have now disappeared because we can now calculate the priority score based on those required fields. Okay, this next error is for the sample results. It's saying that the section sample results has a sample 001, which is awaiting results, and we default to Crocidolite. The reason being that we give it a high material score in case you accidentally issue this report to your clients. It's kind of like the worst case scenario. Once we put the sample results in for 001, this error message will disappear. Likewise for this one and also this one. So let's go ahead and we'll put results in for 001, 002 and 005. I'm going to open up the sample results section. I'm going to add a new item. I'm going to say 001 came back as Crocidolite. 002 came back as Crocidolite. And 005 came back as no asbestos detected in sample, natis. So we've added those three sample results and the three related errors have disappeared from the report. That one was nice and easy. Okay, this next error message is saying it's related to the sample results section, which we've already got open on the right hand side. It's saying that sample 003 has multiple results logged. And clearly that is the case. We've got this one here, which has come back as Crocidolite, and this one here has come back as Crocidolite, but they're for the same sample ID. That doesn't make sense. So clearly one of them is a mistake. I think I've added this second one in error. What I can do is I can delete this, or amend it if I wanted to, but I'm going to delete it. And you can see now we just have one record relating to 003 as expected, and that message has disappeared from the report. Now this next error message is saying we have a sample result 004, but there's no inspection item that references this sample. So what does this mean? Okay, so clearly we have this result here for 004. It's saying it came back as amosite from the lab. Let's have a look at the inspection section, and I'm going to scroll over to the samples. So here's our sample ID. I'm going to group by sample by dragging this up to the top just to make this a bit easier to see. And you can see here we have two records related to sample 001, one related to sample 002, one related to sample 003, and one related to sample 005. But there's nothing related to sample 004, and that's the problem. Now in this example, I'm going to say one of these 001 sample records shouldn't have been linked to sample 001, it should be sample 004. So what I'll do is I'll open this one up, and I'm going to change this to sample 004 and hit save. Now clearly we have one result linked to each of these samples, and that error message has disappeared. Great. Okay, this last error message is to do with the sign-off. So on our asbestos survey report, we do enforce a single sign-off for quality control. Now the first part of the error is saying that we need to look at the sign-off section. So let's open this up, and you can see we don't have anything currently here. If I tap Add Item, I'm going to be prompted for either quality control or other. This quality control one is the one we're interested in. This is the required sign-off that we need. If you did have additional sign-offs, you can also use other and just add as many of those as you need to. So I'm going to pop in my name, and I'm going to put the date in as today and hit save. And you can see that error message has disappeared because we have the required quality control sign-off. So those are some of the common messages you might get on your reports if you're creating an asbestos survey report using our software. Generally, they're very easy to resolve. If you do have any trouble, please get in touch and we'll be happy to walk you through them in a bit more detail.